G-sub and sub function. There are certain functions which are exclusively useful for string substitution operations in R. You can replace the string in a vector or a data frame and substitute the specified string. So basically, if we talk about G-sub and sub, you must have used the find and replace technique in MS Word. It is very much similar to that only, where we are trying to find out a particular location or a particular pattern, and then we are replacing it with some other pattern or other string. The first function which is commonly used is a sub function. The syntax of sub is like, within sub, we have to pass three parameters. The first one is pattern, the pattern or the string which you want to be replaced. So basically, pattern is the pattern we are looking for, or we can say this is the search string that we are looking for, and we want to replace that with some other string. So the second parameter is replacement. It is an input string to replace the pattern string. Third is the vector, which is denoted by X. So X is a vector or a data frame to replace the strings. The sub function in R is used to replace the string in a vector or a data frame with the input or the specified string. So when you are dealing with large data sets, it's impossible to look at each line to find and replace the target words or the strings. So in this case, the sub function will replace the strings. But the disadvantage of the sub function is that the function replaces only the first occurrence by leaving all other similarities, which means it will only replace the first occurrence of the pattern and not all the occurrences. Let's have a look with the help of a sub function and a code. This example is a good example to understand because it is very simple. We are going to replace the string with our input string in a vector, and let's see how it goes. So we have an input vector. The input vector is a data frame. We can see df is the variable which is equated to R is a collaborative project with many contributors. So my string is R is a collaborative project with many contributors. Now I replace the string. So have a look of the function how I have called it. I've called the function sub. Within sub, I am writing R. So the first word that I'm looking for is R. R is my pattern. And now the replacement string is R language. So R is replaced by R language, where in the text string df. So the variable is df. Df is my variable in which the sub function will look for R, and R will be replaced with R language. So when we press enter, you can see the output. The output will be like R language is a collaborative project with many contributors. Let's have a look of one more example in sub and understand better. Now, we all know that sub function can just replace the first occurrence and not all the occurrences of the pattern word. So in this example, you can see a vector df, where the vector is a complete sentence. The earth surface is 71% water covered. Earth has 29% of land. So using sub function to substitute, we write sub planetary earth df. So here what we are doing, we are looking for the string planetary and replacing that with the word earth. So you can see over here that the first occurrence of planetary is replaced with earth and the variable is df. So you can see the output that the first occurrence of planetary is substituted with the word earth, and the second occurrence of planetary is not substituted with the word earth. It remains the same. So in this example, you can observe that the sub function replaces the first occurrence of the string and not all the occurrences. Next occurrence remains the same. Let's talk about the G sub function in R. So G sub function in R is used for replacement operations. The function takes the input and substitutes it against the specified values. So basically, it will find out the pattern, and wherever that value exists, all the values will be replaced by the replacement value. The gsub function always deals with regular expressions. You can use the regular expression as the parameter of substitution. The regular expression is just a series of characters that represents a search pattern in the data. So basically, when we are giving a regular expression, we are giving a series of characters which represent a particular pattern. Let's have a look of this simple implementation of gsub function over here. The gsub function in R is used to replace the strings with input strings or values. So note that you can also use the regular expression with gsub function to deal with numbers. Now let's have a look of this code and understand. A vector df is created which is equated to I love R. The R is a statistical analysis language. This is the data that has R written multiple times. So you can see that R appears twice in this data or in this vector df. Now we are substituting the values using gsub function. Just have a look of the gsub function. In the gsub function, we have written R, which is our pattern to be searched. We are replacing that with the R programming, which is the replacement string. And we are looking that R word in the variable df, which is the data that we have created. Now, when we see the result, what we get? Let's have a look. The output is I love R programming. The R programming is a statistical analysis tool. So you can see over here that twice R was present in the original data, the variable df. But now after applying the gsub function, which is called as the global substitution function, the sentence has taken R programming instead of R. So which means every occurrence of the pattern is replaced by the replacement string if we are using the gsub function. So gsub function is a better function than sub if we have to do a global replacement. Now let's take one more example and understand the gsub function with data frame. So like the sub function, the gsub function is used to substitute the values with the input values. Let's have a look of the data. We have created a data frame df with the function data.frame. Here we have a column speaker. The value of the column speaker is Abraham, Basimo, Frederick, Richard, Ravish, Rubina and Laura. The next column we have is the variable age, where age is equal to a vector 45, 47, 39, 33, 36, 28 and 30. So the moment we type df and press enter, we get the output where we get the data in the form of a data frame, which is a grid of rows and columns. You can see over here that the first row by default is a serial number, which is auto-generated. The second row is the name of the speaker, and the second column is the name of the speaker, and the third column is the age of the speakers. So that is how we have created a data frame. Now we are going to use the regular expression with gsub to substitute the initial space with Mr., Mrs. Prior to every name. So we have passed a regular expression which says dot, asterisk and caret, which means any particular word prior to which there is anything. I mean, there is no letter character, but there is a regular expression. This is the pattern search. So we are looking for dot, asterisk and caret, which means 0 or more characters. So this is our location, what we are looking for, and the replacement string is Mr., Mrs. We have put that into quotes because that is the replacement string. And then the third parameter is our vectors column. So here you can see df $speaker, which means pull the speaker column of the df data frame. Don't take all the columns. Look for this only in the speaker column. So you can see that the speaker vector that we have created, that we have pulled as our location where we want to do a global substitution. And after that, we press enter. So the output is in front of you. You can see we get Mr. Mrs. Abraham, Mr. Mrs. Bazimo, Mr. Mrs. Frederick, and so on till Mr. Mrs. Laura. So the sub and G-sub function in R is used for substitution as well as replacement operations. This we have understood with the help of example. The sub function will replace the first occurrence, leaving the others as it is. On the contrary, the G-sub function will replace all the strings or values with the input strings, dealing with missing data. First thing that we have to understand is imputation versus removing data. So what is imputation? Imputation is that when I'm dealing with the missing data, data scientists can use two methods to solve. The first one is the imputation or the removal of the data, which means that if suppose I'm having a data and that data is incomplete. So in that case, what I can do is I can just remove the data, and that removal of the data is extremely important, because if it is incomplete, then that records make no sense, because half of the information is not given by the respondent. So in that case, the best way is to remove the data. We can remove that particular data from the file. Next is deletion. There are two primary methods for deleting data when dealing with missing data: list-wise and dropping variables. So basically, when we are deleting the data, in that case, either we can go for list-wise, where list-wise we can delete the data. That is, we can delete the data on the basis of some criteria or on the basis of certain conditions. We can delete the data, and sometimes we can drop the variables. For example, if a particular variable is having lot of values which are not available, in that case we can drop the particular variable. For example, if in an address the city is missing, or the country is missing, or the state is missing, then there is no point at keeping that data into your final result. Though city, country, state are extremely important, but if it is not required, that in that case we should not pull that variable into our final result, because the reports will become very abnormal, where lot of blank cells would be there. So in that case, we can drop a particular variable. So that is how I have to understand that should I go with dropping the variables, or list-wise I just remove the records. Next is imputation. Imputation, when the data is missing, it may make sense to delete data as mentioned above. However, that may not be the most effective option. Sometimes we delete the data, but it is actually not correct, because we are not having the data, so we delete it. But ideally, we should make some provisions that we put some related data over there, or some data which can become an indicator about what it could be, and we can have some kind of data over there. Multiple imputations. Multiple imputation is considered a good approach for data sets with a large amount of missing data. So basically, multiple imputation is an approach for data sets when the data is huge. When lot of missing data is there, in that case we can go for multiple imputations. We have a technique called as k-nearest neighbors. In this method, data scientists choose a distance measure for k neighbors, and the average is used to impute an estimate. So basically here what happens, that suppose lot of data is missing, and if that particular column is very important or very crucial, or we can say if that variable is very crucial or very important, we cannot just remove the records, or we cannot just drop the variable. So in that case, what we do is we try to find out k neighbors. K neighbors means we try to measure a distance for k neighbors, and that particular value, that average, is used to substitute at that particular variable where the value is missing. So that is how we are trying to impute an estimate, and we are giving an approximate value in that cell instead of dropping the entire variable. So these are certain ways that is how we can deal with the missing data and prepare our data for the next step of data analysis.